Hi, this is Bill Hartzer, and this is the Digital Marketing Podcast with Bill Hartzer. Digital Marketing with Bill Hartzer podcast for Thursday, April 23rd, 2020. And I have the pleasure of having Amanda Milligan here, Director of Marketing at Fractl. And we're going to talk a little bit about generating growth through content and digital PR. And whether you are small business or a medium-sized or even a large brand, how do we create content? How do we, what type of content we create to basically get brand mentions, links, and, interviews and so forth, and media attention. So welcome, Amanda. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got into digital marketing.
Well, thanks for having me on, Bill. I appreciate it. My name's Amanda. I am the marketing director at Fractl. So Fractl is a growth marketing agency. They're based down in Florida, but we have clients all over the world. I've been with them for about 5.5 years now in a lot of different capacities. I got into this industry kind of accidentally. I think a lot of people did.
Yep.
My degree was in journalism. I didn't want to be a reporter. And I asked everybody how they got into it. And they're like, I don't know, social media is big right now. So I started applying to a bunch of digital marketing agencies. And that was around the time, a little after Penguin and Panda. So they were looking for writers who knew what they were doing.
Yep.
So I got hired that way and entered the agency world and have jumped back and forth between a few jobs. But I've been at Fractl for quite some time and have really picked up on how to create content that people want to talk about and how to get that in the right hands. So it's been a lot of fun.
Sure. So let's start kind of talking a little bit about the process of, okay, well, we know we want, to get media attention. We know we want, we want links to our website, I've actually always thought for years that it's not necessarily just the fact that, I need this particular website or, a high authority website to actually create a clickable link to my website in order for me to have value. And, I do think of it more on a holistic approach where, okay, if I create content and I create something that not only just people, the people want to hear about or read about or talk about or share on social, then sure, it's something that, if it's relevant to my business, people will share it around and it will get media attention kind of naturally, kind of from the viral aspect of it. But at the same time, we sometimes have to push that we do have to do some things to push it out to the to relevant news websites and so forth that really will take it to the next level. And so there is actually a process, I understand, that you go through. Tell me a little bit about that particular process and first, I guess, what content do we create and how do we figure that out? And then let's talk a little bit about, if you will, tell me a little bit about how do we get in front of the media.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. There's a lot of different benefits that people tend to overlook. So yes, you can definitely get some of the best links you've ever gotten through this process. You can also get incredible brand awareness. Even, the no-follow debate is kind of funny in this context because for a while we've always thought there was value, to no-follow links. We found that a lot of the big sites that no-follow, they have some of the best syndication. So if you're talking about brand awareness, brand authority, these publishers are talking about your brand in a different type of way. They're reporting on something that you created that's very authoritative. So there are a lot of benefits. You're also typically mentioned above the fold, as they say. So before you even scroll down, like your brand has some kind of a link or mention up top, which is also really nice. Or even in the headline sometimes. So clients come to us and they have a variety of goals based on what they've already done, but they all kind of fall in this realm. They want to build links. They want to build traffic. Ultimately, a lot of people, it's about traffic and it's about conversions, but sometimes they already have that conversion funnel set up and like, we need more people to be on our site. We need to get our name out there. So based on those nuances, we'll help them come up with a strategy where we're creating content that meets those goals. But a lot of the time it's a mix. It's going to be a combination of different things because one piece of content cannot hit all of your goals simultaneously. It's very rare. I won't say it can't happen, but it's not typical. So, it's a long-term thing. You want to be building up kind of every aspect because it's exponential. They all improve each other. If they've seen your brand more often in the media, they're more likely to write about you later. More people are likely to, share it. It all compounds. So, regardless, our philosophy is really on new data, like and I say that, and I want to clarify, you can create your own information. So you can run surveys, you can use internal data if you have it that you think that's interesting. We've done like germ swabs, we've done all kinds of stuff. Or it could be data that already exists, but there's a lot of stuff out there that nobody has really distilled in an interesting or effective way. There's just government sites alone. There's a ton of just boring spreadsheets and what have you. And just because that's not new, you can take it and make it new in giving it a presentation that people will actually read and be able to get information from. So we're very about creating something new. The other component is emotional. So years ago, we had a study in the Harvard Business Review about, we looked at the top viral images of that year, and then we asked people what emotions they associated with them, because we wanted to see, like how present emotions were, and obviously they were very present, and then which ones were the most present. And surprisingly, I was expecting negative emotions to be up there, but it was actually positive emotions that were more present, but primarily surprise. So it goes back to the new thing. It's people want to see something they've never seen before. So when you have this combination of things, that's a great place to start, because no publisher is going to give you the time of day unless you're giving them something that's new. I mean, if you think about this is back to my journalism life, there's a list of things that are newsworthy, the newsworthy elements, and they're all different ones, but the primary ones are timeliness and sometimes proximity can be relevant. So if you're talking about, if you're local, if you're a brick and mortar business, like proximity will be more important. But timeliness and significance and impact to how many people it matters to. Those are the types of things that writers are looking for. They don't want to talk about something that's like super niche if it doesn't really relate to their audience. So these are all things we're thinking about, and that can really help broaden the reach that you have and increase the chances of somebody writing about what you're doing.
Sure. You mentioned, certainly one of the things that, we were talking earlier, kind of offline before this, and one of the things that you had mentioned to me is kind of that the pitches in general. I mean, that, certainly you mentioned to me that, the process of actually just, you've written something, or you have new information, or you have a list, or have, some results of some research, and it's you can be more effective. I have found I can be more effective if I actually spend some time figuring out which actual reporters or journalists or publications, would be more likely to publish that information, or be interested in it, rather than just doing, this whole big sending it out to, 1,000 different, reporters at the same time.
Yeah. And we actually, so the way that we're structured is we have like a creative department and we have a digital PR department. But what we really emphasize, and even if you're a one-person show, it's easier. In this case, it's easier if you're a one-person show to do this one thing, which is to always incorporate that perspective. So for us, since we have a lot of people and we're doing a lot, we want to make sure that the people who have their heads down in digital PR all the time, who are doing this research constantly, because it is a lot of work, it takes a lot of time, but that they are looped in when the stuff's being created. You cannot do this in a vacuum. So they're able to provide feedback on every stage of what we're doing. So the idea, they will say, okay, yes, I like this idea. I do think it will do well with publishers. Like that happens at the beginning. Because if you wait until the end and suddenly you're like, this thing exists and now we have to promote it. You're not in as good of a place to actually be successful there. So yes, I agree, and I think it could be a way to get a lot of inspiration for ideas if you have put in that work. It's a matter of seeing where your audience is. So what publications are they reading? Once you know that, and I think a lot of people have a sense of that, it's not just that you want to target that publisher. That's not even enough. It's you need to target writers. Remember, you're reaching out to people, and they want to receive an email that sounds like it's from a human being who did their research. Sure. So you need to, and I think this is where people kind of like, they realize they're out of time or they just don't have enough time to do this, and then they kind of like send something off, right? I don't blame them, but it's where a lot of people fumble, because you have to look at a lot of different things. Is this writer even publishing at a regular cadence? Are they writing once a month or once a week or once a day? If they're writing once a month, your chances of getting in there are much lower than if they're writing once a day. What is their exact beat? We surveyed 500 writers last year and asked them kind of what annoyed them the most about being pitched by PR people. And they said, still to this day, most of their pitches are not relevant to what they write about. That must get so annoying, opening things that are not relevant to what you want to write about. And you might think you're kind of on track, like they write about sports. It's for a sports publication. That's not how these writers work. They have a very specific set of topics they cover. Sometimes it's the intersection of two topics, and maybe you didn't even pick up on that. You have to really be careful. Read their Twitter account. Read what they're, sometimes they say, and people don't get that far enough to like see what it is that they want. Do they publish research from other people? Sometimes they just write, columns, and you really have to take a look at these things. And there are tools to help you, but there is still manual work involved in understanding who they are and what they're writing, because also you need to personalize these pitches. Everybody's now very against the template pitch, and I understand. You have to, like I said, sound like a person. Like, hey, I really like this article you wrote last week. Oh, I love this tweet that you sent out. Whatever it is, remember, this is a person. Talk about something, connect with them on a human level, and then tell them, this is something we created that I think makes perfect sense for your audience, and this is why. And a pitch like that will go much farther. And that's why we have a whole team of people who do it, because it takes a lot of time. It's not something you can just sit down and do in, a minute. But it's really important. And you're absolutely right to say that creating it is kind of half the battle. You still have to figure out where it's going to go and how you're going to get it there.
Yeah, I mean, and then obviously if we want to throw in another curveball is that a lot of these major publications like Forbes and some of these others, they have, contributors. And so they're not actually staff at Forbes. They're a Forbes contributor that may have, may not be, they're sure they're right content, but so you kind of have to actually spend the time and figure out, okay, is this a contributor or what type, writer, what have they written in the past? And I've also noticed that there's a lot of independent writers or freelancers, if you will, that will write, but they'll write for 10, 15 different publications. So there's a good chance if you actually connect with them, and if they've written in the past about stuff, about things on your topic or in your niche, they may say you may be able to actually connect with them. I know I've got a couple writers that in the Dallas, or reporters actually in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, that I wouldn't say I've been stalking them, but I've been, connecting with them, retweeting their stuff, asking them questions on Twitter for years. And finally, there was one day where all that retweeting and so forth and connecting with them, they needed an expert, and so they reached out to me directly, and they literally come with the news van to my house and did an interview. Wow. And so it's that connecting, and I feel like, okay, if there's something on that topic, I could actually email or actually text this particular reporter on his cell phone and say, hey, if I did this, or if I had created this content, or this research or whatever, would this be something that your publication or your news station would be interested in?
Yeah.
And so that's you get to that situation, and sure, I mean, that is something that's kind of, sure, it is pitching, but sure, once actually one place kind of once they pick it up and you have that one relationship, if they report on it, it's odd, but what happens is other news stations also want to do the story or do something, also interview you. And so that can have, same thing with publications and so forth. So it can kind of snowball, if you will, that way. But it's those particular relationships that, and so start to think about, my advice is to actually start to think about, not just, okay, we're going to create a piece of content, and we're going to try and find somebody to pitch. Do it the opposite way. Figure out those relationships. Go to, when you have conferences, not necessarily in the search industry, because there's not a lot of reporters who go to, and journalists who go to, search conferences like, PubCon and
Mm-hmm.
SMX and so forth. But in some of the other industries, there are specific, let's say, say insurance or legal or something like that. There's certain, at conferences, there are, they have media partners, and they have, that's where you can actually get a meet in person and actually stand and talk and with those journalists, because they're covering the conference.
Yeah.
And so that's a great, I've been successful in certain areas that way as well.
Yeah, no, it's a great point, and we've certainly seen similar things. So the way I think some people, when they're pitching, they're so focused on their own goals, right? They're like, we got to get this out there. If you're
Yep.
thinking about it, like, you're sending this to somebody to help them, because if you're doing your job right, you're sending a writer something they can cover, and they're looking to fill their schedule or looking for news. And if you match that up well, if you send them what's going to be
Yep.
great for their audience, they're going to be grateful, because but
Sure.
that's only if you're doing your job right. If you're sending them something that doesn't fit, that's going to be like, you take time out of their day, they're going to feel the opposite. They're going to be very annoyed, and they're not going to want to hear from you anymore. But that's what you have to think about, not just about you. It's, how am I going to help these people, these writers, reach their audiences and engage with them, because they want that same thing. They want their audience to like what they write. So you're right. You got to think about it on like the human level. You're connecting with these people, and you want to help them too, and they'll help you in return. That's that's what they always say. But try to think, like, it's easy to get stuck in just, I gotta pitch this out, I gotta get links, I gotta yada yada. Thinking about it
Sure.
like, how is this actually going to help the person I'm emailing? And if the answer is you don't know, then you still have work to do.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it comes down to then the content. I mean, let's talk a little bit about the actual content. I mean, that's there's so many different ideas and so forth, and research and things that you can necessarily do. I mean, I like to start with the persona. Okay, what kind of person do we actually, who's our ideal customer? Is it a business owner? Is it a small business owner? Is it actually a consumer who wants a mortgage, or somebody who is whatever it is? And so kind of understand that, and then kind of start to think about the content of what would they be interested in. Certainly, we don't have to kind of necessarily just come up with ideas. Certainly looking at a publication, and figuring out what is done well, for what there are tools out there like BuzzSumo, for example, and we can see what articles got a lot of engagement, and especially if an article got thousands and thousands of comments, then it's probably pretty popular, whether it's, even if it's kind of controversial, or somebody loves it or hates it, or has an opinion, then it's probably whatever content you're producing, you do want that, readers to have emotions. And so we kind of, then I go back to, certain cases where there's content that you can just create that on a regular basis. Let's take, the top 100 beaches in the world. That's content that, okay, it's content that you can produce the first time, and then every year everybody looks forward to that list, and then every year you're going to get more and more media attention, and people are going to want to say, okay, well, let's go find the best beaches, or the list of the best beaches, or those types of things. It's that content that you can produce over and over again annually. So there's a lot of ideas out there. You don't necessarily have to be so creative that that you have to kind of reinvent. But it's what type of research do you guys do for content ideas?
Yeah, I think you touched on a few of the things we do. So we always look to see if there's proof that something like this would perform well. And to do that, you're looking at things that have performed well in the past. Not necessarily it can be the publishers you're targeting. It could be competitors. It can be like just going on BuzzSumo, like you said, we love that tool, going on BuzzSumo and seeing what has performed well in that industry. And not just topically, but methodologically, if that's a word. It's like, oh, this is a unique methodology applied this way. Can we use that and do it this instead? So the inspiration can come in a lot of different ways. It can come, like you said, from the personas. You should always have a good understanding of who you're trying to reach in the first place, what their challenges, their wants, their fears are. And then you can get it from just the types of data that are out there. Some people just find data and they're like, why do I care about this? What's the emotion in this? What is at stake with this? And then they can get an idea from that. A methodology they can get an idea from. We have, a huge document of places that our creative team goes to if they're stumped. There's a ton of subreddits that they go to. Some of the classic ones are like Data is Beautiful and those types of things. All kinds of subreddits. You can go to Answer the Public or any of those other free. BuzzSumo has a similar tool with questions, so you see the common questions in different topic areas. There's like the summary is just there's a lot of ways to get at it. The emotion part is key, like you said, and I think it's also not being afraid. We have this philosophy where we like to think tangentially, which and I'll do this both ways. Tangentially meaning instead of only thinking about what your brand does, think outside the box about what's relevant to that audience in that industry, but not necessarily your service offering, because that's not going to be what publishers want to talk about anyway. They're going to think you're pitching them an ad. So, for example, and we have the full case study on our site if you want to see it, but I'll talk about it a bit, which is Porch.com was a client of ours, and they do home improvement. So we would say, okay, we did some campaigns that were related to home improvement that were data driven about like how much does it cost, like what is most expensive, what makes sense to do, et cetera. But then we also did studies and surveys about relationships in the home and food and cooking in the home. So they were all related to the home. If you think about the umbrella, it's home. You're fixing up your house where your family lives and you spend your evenings together. So even if you have a topic, it doesn't have to end there. You got to think kind of, okay, what is broaden out in your 100 beaches example, and you're totally right. There are some things you can repeat forever. Some people might be like, I have this great idea. I want to come up with 100 best beaches, and then they look and it already exists, right? And they're like, and then they give up, right? And to your point earlier, think about what your audience wants to see. So sometimes it's a matter of getting more specific. Maybe, and you'll see this, like if you look for top beaches, I'm sure there's a million iterations of that, which are like, maybe the best beaches with boardwalks in the country. Maybe it's the best beaches you should go to in the summer when it's not like 95 degrees. There's so many considerations where you're going to now meet the intent of somebody who's looking for something very specifically. And they're kind of probably going to be like, wow, I'm impressed that this list exists. It's exactly what I'm looking for, rather than having to look at 15 other top beach lists and figure it out myself. So unfortunately, there's not like a very straightforward, like just do this answer. But if you allow yourself to, once you find those topics or methodologies or personas, to allow yourself the time to brainstorm outside of that. And I think in doing so, you're giving yourself the space to come up with something really cool.
Yeah, and certainly, certainly it's worth mentioning also that even if you're a small business and even a one-man business or one-person business, in small, just a service area business, doing painting or roofing business or some kind of home improvement or service area business, carpet cleaning. There's going to be even though you might be in cover the Dallas area or the San Francisco Bay Area, there's still opportunities here to think, like a bigger brand and create, that list or that content, and get that media attention because, that's how a lot of, that's how a lot of companies were small brands at one point and they became larger brands. And this is exactly how they did it in a lot of cases is with that content and so forth and getting brand mentions and not just focusing in on, oh, I need to get a link, but think of it as more holistic approach. And that's what we're talking about here today.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're just about out of time. So this is the Digital Marketing Podcast with Bill Hartzer. And today I have Amanda Milligan from Fractl, Director of Marketing from Fractl. How can we get in touch with you?
Sure. Email me, amanda@frac.tl. That's our website URL as well, frac.tl. I also have a podcast of your own content. It's called Cashing In on Content Marketing. It's specifically designed to help you measure your results and get buy-in for strategy. So if you're in content, check it out. And you can find me on Twitter. You can search for my full name, or it's Millanda, Millanda. But please feel free to reach out. I can talk. I'm an extrovert. I can talk literally all day about this stuff. So let me know if you have any questions. And thanks for having me on the show, Bill. It was fun.
Yep. Thanks again for joining me. This has been the Digital Marketing Podcast with Bill Hartzer for April 23rd, 2020. Thanks again, Amanda.
Thank you.
Thanks.